Hi, I'm Randall from Randall's ESL Cyber Listening Lab, providing tips on language learning, culture, and human development. And if I look back on my teaching career, it really began in 1987 when I stepped into my first language classroom experience as an English teacher. I was teaching adult education at a high school, and boy, was it challenging. Challenging in the sense that, well, as a teacher, sometimes you feel, oh, they're going to ask me all kinds of questions, and I'm not going to understand how to respond to those questions. And I think many teachers and students from around the world are trying to find meaningful connections with each other, but trying to solve some of the most interesting, complex, frequently asked questions about language learning and just development as human beings. And as I was developing and getting ready for this broadcast this past week, I thought about this topic and I thought, I don't think that I really can completely answer these questions myself. In other words, today's broadcast is going to be with three insightful guests. The three guests that I'm bringing on are from Brazil, Elaine Oliveira. From Tunisia, we have Riyad Kuba. And from Nepal, we have Pragya Adhikari. And they are going to be joining me to answer questions that are dealing with language learning because, to be honest, I really enjoy the perspectives of teachers from around the world working in different teaching environments, working with different students and so forth. And so we're going to get right into our broadcast. Throughout this 1 hour, we're going to try to answer as many questions as we can, kind of a rapid fire session of questions, but certainly this should be an exciting episode for us today. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to bring on our guest today and welcome to this episode, Riyad, Pragya, and Elaine.
Yes, welcome. Hi, Randall. Thank you so much for inviting us today.
Great. Well, let's just jump into this. And just if you could each take about 30 seconds or so. And again, we could all spend for 1 hour talking about ourselves and sharing our experiences. But if we could take about 30 seconds to introduce ourselves, where we're from, our name, and where we are teaching and what we're doing, that could kind of lay the groundwork for today's episode. Pragya, could you start us out?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you, Randall. So my name is Pragya. My home country is Nepal. I come from Nepal. Currently, I'm residing in Canada. I teach my students online. I teach the students of Urgent Boarding High School.
Okay, great. And Elaine, if you could talk to your experience and background.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elaine Oliveira. I'm a Brazilian teacher of English for 17 years, but for the last 2 years, I've been online. I live in Brazil, but I've already lived in the US, and I teach mainly adults, and that's what I love to do. I hope I can share with you guys today and experience lots of learning.
Right. And Riyad.
Yes, hello. My name is Riyad Kuba. I am an English teacher. I am originally from Tunisia, and I've been teaching English for about 14 years. And I'm very happy today to be with you and to share amazing ideas on how to get your English better.
Okay. And as I mentioned right before the broadcast, I've received comments from not only students, but also teachers about how to improve their English. And so today we're going to be answering questions. Some of these questions have come in during this past week. We invite you, teachers and students, to ask questions during this broadcast. We're going to try to answer as many questions as we can during the next hour. And it's going to be in a rapid fire kind of system where we'll ask a question and we'll address that. Before we get right into this, if we could, we just kind of see who is Hakima. Hakima, interesting topic. Well, thank you, Hakima from Tunisia. Samaya, thank you. Hi, everyone from Tunisia. Sudeep from Nepal, I think a colleague of yours, Pragya. Yeah. And Hakima says, hi, inspiring colleague, Riyad Kuba. So thank you very much. And let's just get right into this. What we're going to try to do is we're going to try to answer as many questions as we can. Again, the title of the episode is The What's, Whys, and Hows of Language and Cultural Learning. So let's just get right into this. Again, those that are watching the broadcast, feel free to answer questions. We have a list of questions we're going to try to address, but we want to hear your voice. So let's go ahead and start with question number one. Are some people just born with the ability to learn languages? And I'm learning English so slowly. And basically, what can I do? Riyadh, could you kind of speak to that question to get us started?
Yes, of course. So this is a very common question, and especially at the beginning of every year. So we get asked this question if, for example, some students are good and others are not. So the answer to this question is that all people are born with the ability to learn any language. And we know that we all speak at least one language. And if we manage to speak one language, so we can learn other languages. But the reason is why some students think that they are slowly when it comes to learning languages is that they are not exposed to the language, which is a common factor to mastering or to getting the hang of this language. So anyone is able to learn any language.
Okay,
Yes.
great for thinking. Thanks for sharing that. Elaine, could you speak to that particular topic as well?
Yeah, sure. I totally agree with what Riyadh said. People are not exposed enough and everything. But there's also something very interesting that is what is to learn English slowly and what is to learn English fast. I think there's no such thing as slow or fast when you are talking about language learning, because it depends on your goals. It depends on, as Riyadh said, the amount of dedication you put in. So if someone is putting in, I don't know, like 5 hours a day, every day for a month, and they are not learning, then that's slow. But, you know, it really depends on tons of factors. So I really don't like to rate it like slow or fast or this or that.
All right. And one of the things is you can see right behind me, one of my props today, when I think about language learning, I think, well, you know, sometimes you just have to have realistic goals about what you're trying to do. I mean, I can do this. Woo-hoo! And I can dunk the basketball. But again, sometimes I need to set maybe realistic expectations of what can and cannot be done. I think that's kind of important.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's kind of go on to the next question. If Pragya, you could speak to this question. This is from Omar from Tunisia. And he says, how can I improve my pronunciation in English and sound like a native speaker?
So it's
And you have 20 seconds to answer that question.
improving pronunciation, you can always practice a lot. I think practice makes it perfect. So, but whenever I see people expecting that I need to speak like a native speaker, to some extent, I don't agree to that, because speaking correctly and having a good pronunciation is always better. And if the other person understands you, that's more fluent for me. So compared to native speaker, I would say good pronunciation is important. And for that, practice makes perfect. So
now, Elaine, you did a thumbs up. What were you meaning by thumbs up there?
Yeah, totally. What is the point of sounding like a native speaker? A native speaker from which country?
Exactly.
You can sound like a Jamaican maybe, and then is that what you want? A Jamaican is a native speaker of English. Is that really what you want? Maybe not. So I don't know. I totally agree with Pragya.
And I think it could be, for example, sometimes comprehensibility should be perhaps the first thing that we're trying to achieve, not just to eliminate the accent, because Riyadh has an accent, Elaine, you have an accent, Pragya, you have an accent, and we all have accents. And I think that's kind of important there.
Even in the States, there are different accents as far as I can remember, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. There are 50 states. It's impossible to have one accent in 50 states.
Fluency should be the target. Fluency should be the target, not the accent itself or sounding like native speakers.
Right. So let's see what again, some comments that are coming in. If you want to improve any language acquisition, you have to immerse in it. And I know, Riyadh, you've spoken about that before, of trying to immerse yourself. But how do you immerse yourself when you're not immersed in that particular culture where the language is most commonly spoken?
Well, I think we should create the environment. So I think one of the things that we should do to improve our English is that we have to live the language and make English or learning language a lifestyle. For example, you have to, you can write like Facebook posts in English. You can do some listening, a little bit of writing, reading, speaking. So you have to do bits of everything. And you can even, for example, change or switch the language of your phone into English. This is something that you can do to learn English. So I think all your life should revolve around English, so that you create that environment and you get exposed to the language. Of course, we don't have the opportunity to practice English with native speakers, but we have some means or some tools that we can use to improve our English. Yes.
Great, great. Well, the next question is a somewhat tough question. I'm going to throw that out to Elaine. To be honest, this is a question that came in. To be honest, I really don't like English because my teacher is boring. What can I do? There you are. How can you speak to that question?
All right. Find yourself another teacher. I'm around. I'm fun. But the language, well, but it's not going to be fun all the time. That to be honest, even though I am a kind of funny person, and I think that at some moments we really need to try to make the classes as interesting as possible, I don't think it's possible for a student to believe, and I think that's a current mistake that many teachers have been making, including myself, right? To make the class just too much fun. All right, we can have some fun, but the class is still a class, so it's not going to be fun all the time. How boring is your teacher? Is like sleepy boring or just boring? I don't have fun boring. You know, what kind of boring is it? So, but if you need another teacher, right? I'm happy.
Maybe I can add something else, because I have this question every now and then, and my answer to my students, for example, you should learn the language or any subject for yourself, not for the teacher. So maybe you can have 1 year a teacher that you don't like or that you don't feel comfortable with, but you should learn it for yourself, because that teacher will go, but your level will get lower and lower. So if you don't feel comfortable with the teacher, or you don't like him or her, so you should create your own learning environment and find someone else who can help you learn this language.
Great, great comments. A couple of comments that have come in so far. Here's a comment from Nelson. A little distance due to my education matters, but thankful for your teaching. Maybe we are distant, we are far away from each other, but we're still trying to connect. Ricardo says, greetings from Monterrey, Mexico. Welcome. Again, Oles from Mexico. And Mesa says, yes, some people are born with the ability to learn another language in a faster way than others, and it is exactly the same as some people are born with musical talents. It is all about having some areas in the brain that are more active when it comes to certain activities such as math, languages, and skills. And so perhaps there can be certain things that impact language learning for sure. All right.
Yeah, can I make a comment on that, Randall?
Yeah, sure.
I think that there's just a little detail there. People are born with ability. Everyone is born with ability, as Riyadh said. We are born with the ability. If you get a Brazilian baby and this Brazilian baby is raised in Japan, this Brazilian baby is going to speak Japanese because the brain is exposed to the language. So the thing is, not even how fast, because we can't really measure what is fast, what is slow, but how deeply can the person grasp the notion of the language, right? Some people will be fluent, but they will still not grasp the whole thing, and we're going to talk about culture and everything. So I think these details, some people will get faster, but language itself, everybody can learn a language.
Yes, and to prove your point, I worked with a native speaker from England, and she was living here in Tunisia, and she gave birth, and her son was learning 2 languages at the same time. So with his mother, he was speaking, or he speaks English, and with his father and with his Tunisian family, so he speaks Arabic. So at the same time, he can speak 2 languages. So anyone can speak any language if he is really motivated to do so.
And I think there are some biological components as well. I know that our kids grew up in Japan. Our oldest daughter, Aubrey, learned it very quickly. Our son had some challenges. You could say some challenges in actually learning the language. He stuttered. He just struggled even in English. So there are some biological components as well.
Sure there are.
Pragya, if you could speak to this question, this was from Salma. He says, I find it very hard to speak out loud in class. When a teacher asks a question, I have the answer most of the time, but I'm afraid to answer. I can't speak well. So how can I perhaps speak out more in the classroom?
So for this, I really think it's all about the learning environment that is created in the class. It depends how your language teacher has created a learning environment. Because if your students are not comfortable with your learning environment, they will never be able to express well. So I think it all depends on teacher how she can do it. And if the student she can always have one-to-one talk. If she's not able to answer in the class, she can have one-to-one talk, and she can always boost up her confidence, and later on she can expose to her class. If I have to give you my class example, what I tend to do with the students who are very shy, I try to do show and tell games. So that's like, I just show them something that they really have, and I'm like, you can talk on this topic for 30 seconds or 1 minute. If they have a pen, this is my favorite pen, so they can talk about it. So slowly they'll be able to practice, and they'll be able to express themselves.
Okay, so you're saying setting up the classroom so that it's conducive to that type of environment.
Yeah.
I remember growing up and when I was studying Spanish in high school, the teacher had the tendency to call out that young lady in the front row who was always raising her hand.
Yeah.
Always raising her hand. And I was sitting in the back. You know, my mother's native language was Spanish, but I couldn't speak it at all. And I could see the teacher's eyes always gravitating to that one student. So that can be a real challenge to try to balance that out.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what other questions are coming in here. Let's see here. Kaylor from Costa Rica says, despite the fact that we pronounce words correctly, our accent will always come out unless you are a native of a second language as well. Any comment at all about pronunciation? I know we've talked just a little bit about that before.
I agree. Hi, Kaylor, by the way, miss you. But yeah, I agree with him. If you have, I think I have this kind of, it sounds really easy for me to speak American English, but not, of course, I have my Brazilian accent, but I was raised in the US for a while, and it was kind of my second language because I was a real small child. So I think it makes a little difference, not in accuracy, but in the accent itself. But what difference does it make unless I want to be a Hollywood actress, right, and sound American?
Well, you have Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger, he has his accent, and if you took away his accent, he wouldn't be famous. So, and I think here's a really good comment. This comes from Samaya. Why should you want to sound like a native speaker?
Unless you have a specific role in a movie which you need to sound British or Australian or whatever. I don't think it's got any purpose on that. But
right.
I don't know.
Yeah, and there's some questions that are coming in. Again, there's a question by Henda talking about Noam Chomsky. Is language acquisition something innate or required? We certainly could talk more about that, but certainly those are elements. Yusuf says, for learning English, first of all, we have to get rid of our concerns and focus on our goals. Could anyone speak to the goal setting? Riyadh, what is the purpose and goal of some goals?
That's very interesting in anything actually in our lives. If you want to be successful in any field, so the first thing we have to do is to set a clear goal with a deadline. And this is something that most of the students don't do, actually. They just learn the language as it is every day. But if they change their goals, for example, they can say, I want to become a fluent speaker of English in 1 year or in 2 years. So this is the first thing. By doing that, they will or they have to make a plan for that goal. If I set, for example, a 2-year goal, so I will be working hard during these 2 years. If it is 1 year, I will work even harder. After that, because something else here very important, a goal without a plan is just a wish. So that's one of the things that most students don't, let's say, make that progress, or they don't see that progress because they just study it every now and then without having a goal where they want to become in the future as speakers of English. Yes.
And if I
So
could
agree with
interject, sometimes I have students in my program, and you probably have experienced this too, where you have siblings, a brother and a sister and a sister, and the older sister, oh, well, she learns so quickly. And then the parents are expecting the younger child, well, if you just set the same goal, you'll be able to speak just like your sister. And certainly, Riyadh, you're right, setting goals, but I think being aware of some of those differences in abilities and just what is going on in their own personal lives that can affect how they're doing.
Actually, I think it's not about abilities, it's about the incentive that you have. For example, if I want to study abroad in the US or in Canada or Australia, and I know that English is a requirement, it's a strong requirement. So I have a strong incentive, for example, or stronger incentive than other people who just want to learn the language for the language itself, not for something else. So it's about the incentive itself.
I guess what I'm saying as well is that even though people have goals, sometimes there are things that are going on in their lives beyond our awareness. Let's say that you have, a brother and sister, but the younger brother is being bullied at school. And so the emotional trauma that is going on could impact their ability to learn as well. And I think we all agree with that.
Yeah. Yes.
How about this one, Pragya, if you could speak to this, and then Elaine, again, this is from Mariam from Tunisia. She says, I'd like to know how to overcome my difficulties in dealing with grammar, mainly tenses and forms. Again, a lot of times students find that grammar, when they think of the word grammar, they think of fast writing. They don't think it like grammar and chocolate ice cream, the same, nice and fluffy. So how do you overcome difficulties with grammar? If you could speak to that, Pragya, and then Elaine chime into that same topic.
Yeah, I would love to learn from Rihad and Ellen on this, but for me, if you talk, I have seen lots of language learners who are more focused on grammar. And I wonder if grammatically all the correct sentences, do we really practice that in our real life? Sometimes the sentences are grammatically correct, but it's not needed, to be very honest, in our daily conversation language. So I keep on struggling with this question a lot. So I'd like to get suggestions from my friends on this.
Great. Thank you. And again, that's why we're here together. To learn together. Elaine, could you speak to that topic of grammar learning?
Yeah, sure. I like to play with this. I usually tell my students the same. I tell my kids, look, you can only break the rules when you know the rules. So I totally agree with Pragya. How far knowing grammar and being so language accurate how far is that really our goal, and how far is that really important? But on the other hand, some students just say, oh, when I teach a sentence, and then they say, oh, but I heard this on a song or in a movie, and the guy just said like that, and they said yes, but he's making a reduction because he can control the language and he can choose, right? And he's trying to be informal, and you don't know this you don't know how to move from one register to another, so it's better to learn the structure and then move on to something more informal. So I kind of try to teach them something that it's also a little bit more natural, what we listen in everyday life. But there's no way from running away from grammar, not in the most boring way we're used to, like, okay, I am, repeat, you are, no, but there's no running away from grammar, a little bit.
Maybe I can add something and tell our students how they can break the rules. And here I would like to mention a way to learn grammar that might sound a little bit odd, but I think it's the easiest, the most powerful, and the most effective way to learn grammar is by listening. And here is why I believe so. Because some people, even, for example, any native speaker, learn grammar by, or people in general, read grammar by reading and listening to something. And they find that interesting. But they don't just listen and or read for information. They look carefully, but when they listen a lot to English every day, for example, they will look carefully at how sentences are structured, and this helps them see how see new grammar rules, and they can use themselves when speaking or when writing English in general.
Yeah.
So listening is a very powerful way to learn grammar. For example, if they listen to a sentence, he went to school a couple of times, so he will learn that that word "went" means to go in the simple past. So they don't need to memorize the verb as it is, the verb to go, and the simple past went, and the past participle gone. So they will learn it from the context itself.
Great.
So
and I think there are times students ask me, and I think both of you, all of you have spoken to this topic. Native speakers, I mean, when I ask, sometimes students used to say to me, Randall, I want to live in your house so I can learn to speak fluently. And I said, no, you don't. And they said, why? You're a native speaker. And I said, you know, people in my house break the rules all the time. It's kind of like simply the transitive and intransitive verb of lay and lie. Yeah, we should say, I want to lie down, I'm tired. But probably the whole world says, I want to lay down. And so, for example, when I'm with my family, and I want to fit in, I want to belong to my family group, I break the rule. I say, yeah, I'm really tired. I want to lie. No, not lie. Not lie. That's the correct form. I want to fit in with my family. Yeah, I'm tired. I want to lay down. And so you can, if you understand the rules, but you have to be very, very careful. All right. Let's see what other questions have come in. Great. Let's see what other questions have coming in. Mona says, some learners just love the language too much and want to sound like British or Americans because the language is the mirror for culture. So a lot of times people just want to sound they want to dress the right way. They want to look the right way and so forth. I think that's important. Henda says, we should make grammar teaching and learning something natural and automatic. We should never hamper learning with grammar rules. So let me ask you, Pragya, when you are introducing grammar, how do you go about, introducing the rule so that the students don't go, oh no, not this grammar page 29 again?
Like I personally have a good challenge while doing grammar. So how I start is normally if I have to start with noun or pronouns, I try to give them live examples. So I try to connect with their real examples so that they can get it. But at times, if I try to give some rules, if I try to teach them rules, of course, they are going to feel bored. So the only way these days I'm struggling is playing more of online games. I'm doing lots of online games. So that's the only interesting thing I can do with my grammar classes right now.
Okay, where is Randall? You guys missing someone?
Hi there.
I'm back.
Okay, great.
How you been having yourself?
I was checking my grammar. All right. So great. Some great questions coming in. Mona says, in Tunisia, we do grammar tests. So we teach integrated grammar and reading and listening. So maybe finding a way of integrating things, I think, is important. Samaya says, most challenging part is to learn the rules with exceptions. So you might have these 20,000 exceptions that you have to consider as well. Great comments there. All right. I'm glad you took over for me when I pressed the wrong button. All right. Let's take a look at some other questions that are coming in. Let's see here. Zainab says, in listening or dictation, how do we make the difference or tell the difference between words which are pronounced the same but are written differently, like right or right? And my thought on this is sometimes, for example, if you hear the word right, hey, right, that can mean turn right, or it could be write a sentence. And I think a lot of times, Zainab, when I think about this particular topic, it deals with context, how it is used. Is it used as a verb, an adjective, and so forth? I think that's important. Let's get in.
Pitch in to something real quick. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No.
Zainab, right, said about dictation. It's interesting to, I don't know, but I don't really use dictation because I deal with adults and they don't really like it. But if you're dealing with kids or teens, it would be interesting to dictate like a sentence, a short sentence. Because then if you say, oh, please write on the paper, and then the student would be able to realize which kind of write would be, you know. So maybe not just working with word dictation, but sentence dictation. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's probably what they mean, but I think you're talking about sentence contextualization and so forth. Great. Yeah. All right. Here's a question from your home country, Riyadh. It's from Bahad, and he says,
Bahad, yes.
Okay. What are the goals of cultural learning in the second language classroom? So what is the connection between culture and the language? How can you make connections in different ways?
I think learning a language and its culture are interrelated. And I think that you cannot understand a country's culture without learning its language. Learning a language goes beyond memorizing just words or some basic grammar rules. And understanding culture is like having a context that allows you to give the right meaning to each new word that you learn. And to understand the culture, we need to go further than textbooks and dictionaries. For example, students and learners can use a wide range of alternative resources to get relevant information about locals by watching movies, reading newspapers, magazines, because these resources really give us the culture of the language that we are learning. So they are related to each other, let's say.
Yeah, and if I could ask, I'm going to bring you in both, Elaine and Pragya. When I think of Nepal, how many ethnic groups are there? Is it just like the country's all the same? I mean, how many ethnic groups and languages are you speaking about just in Nepal alone?
We have almost 44 ethnic groups and more than 127 languages.
Okay. So again, we're talking about diversity, and I probably could ask the same thing in Brazil. Brazil is a big country.
Yeah.
So what kind of diversity do you see there? And if someone said, I want to learn Portuguese, what does that mean? And what's the diversity like just in Brazil?
Yeah, we also have just tons of idioms, and we don't have specifically, we used to have the indigenous people language, but it was killed over time, right? But nowadays we have all kinds of accents, and I myself sometimes have trouble speaking to native Brazilian speakers, so it's complicated because we have all of this additional elements. But talking about culture, it's so interesting because I tell my students sometimes some idioms or some expressions in English, and they, as Riyadh said, they don't understand, and they say, but this doesn't make any sense, or usually phrasal verbs. I love explaining phrasal verbs. And they say, but this doesn't make any sense. And then I show them culturally how things work, and then they're like, oh, it makes a lot of sense. And I say, see, phrasal verbs do make sense, and so many other things. So it's really interesting. And as Riyadh said, you can't detach one thing from the other. Language is part of the culture. It's not that they are, interrelated. Language is one part of a culture. There is no such thing as culture without a language, right?
Right. Great questions there. Let's see what else. A couple of other questions that we have. Oh, how can I deal with teachers who aren't fair and don't understand me? Does that ever happen? Pragya and then Riyadh.
Yes.
That do happen, actually. There are teachers. Sometimes what happens is
your students are watching, just so you know.
No. No, what happens is, like, when a teacher is putting so much effort in the class, unknowingly there are times when they tend to accept those students who are quick learners, who can just grasp the things. It's not on purpose. You can't say they're doing it in purpose, but it's something how their brain works. Sometimes you feel good when someone responds to you, right? It doesn't feel good when there are 30 people in a class and you're talking alone and no one is responding. So you tend to choose a kid who is like always ready to answer, like the one you said, who are in the first bench and they're always responding with raising hands. So I think like the best thing, whenever hear from my students that teachers aren't fair, my solution is always one. Always create a rapport with your teacher. That's very important. Creating rapport is very important. I see these days, I don't know how you all have been, but what used to happen during my school days is if I had a problem with teacher, I used to like, Dad, can you go and talk to him, please? I can't tell about that. I didn't do my homework. Can you go and talk? But these days, the kids are smart. They can go and they can talk to their teachers. They're more friendly. They can say, Teacher, I had some issues. I couldn't complete my homework. So could you please help me with this? So teachers are friendly these days. It's just that you need to open up. You can't have a perception in your mind that teachers are always strict. They're always rude. You can't be doing that. So I think that ice needs to be broken by the student itself.
Okay, good points. I think, as you mentioned, developing a very meaningful rapport with the students so that they can see, because, a lot of times, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but as my kids got a little bit older, they said, Dad, don't tell me the story that you walked uphill to and from school, and you walked in 3 meter deep in snow to get to school, and that life was more difficult than it is now. And I think people want to feel connected with their teachers. Any thought on that, Riyadh, just about how to create a good environment with your students?
This is something very essential, especially for every teachers and even for students, because you cannot work comfortably if you don't have that kind of strong relationship or bond between the teacher and the students. And I do that right away from the beginning of the year by creating a Facebook post, and I try to post some pictures of greetings, for example, some love expressions, trying to express that love to my students. And last week I had like something that I did and that I always do with my students is, for example, during the lesson I say, you are the best students I have ever taught. And then after saying this statement, one of the students was kind of surprised, and she asked me, Sir, I would like you to repeat what you said to the headmaster and to the other colleagues. And then I said, why? Because she said that most teachers complain about our behavior and about our level. And you see here, that word made the students really excited and interested about learning the language. So we have to be always positive with our students and praise them, even if they are not that good as when it comes to their level of English or any level in general, let's say. Yes. So that's
Great.
very important.
Thank you very much. Some other comments that have come in right here. Nerime says, hello from Tunisia. My question is that my English speaking is good, but I did not practice writing for a long period. How can I improve my writing skills? Elaine, could you speak to that for a minute?
Yeah, I think that we have pairs: listening and speaking, reading and writing. For you to be a better writer, you need to be a better reader. So read more, read diversely, read from different sources, read newspapers, read different kinds of newspapers. Sometimes there's those tabloids. You can read some kind of gossip or the sports news or a magazine, or read a website about something you like, cooking, recipes, I don't know. Get things from different sources. You know what I like to do? Reading comments from people, just to understand how native speakers write and everything. So once you read very well and very much, you'll be able to write better. That's my advice.
Great point. Yes, Riyadh. Thank you very much. So extensive reading can lead to vocabulary development, seeing how sentences are put together, and so forth. Yes, Riyadh.
Grasping the structures and everything.
Super. Riyadh, did you have a comment on that?
Yes. Maybe students can, for example, now they have access to social networks. For example, they should find a subject that they are interested in, or a celebrity, or any group or page on Facebook. Especially, it should be in American English or British English, and they can read. This is what Elaine said, and then they should make it a habit to write comments on that post. And so reading leads to good writing. So of course they will get information, and then they will read what people would say about this topic or that topic, and then they should make it as a habit to write at least a couple of lines or a few sentences to interact with other people. Yes.
Great. A few comments that have come in. Yusuf says, we feed ourselves in a day at least 3 times. We should feed our second language to learn it. I mean, to have it, to study it. So maybe feeding that in different ways by reading, as Elaine mentioned, by writing something every day. Marwa says, hi from Tunisia. Thank you for this great topic. I want to thank my English teacher, Riyad Kuba, for his efforts and his enjoyable method to learn and teach us. My question, what are the most efficient ways to improve English pronunciation? We've kind of touched on that just a little bit, but Pragya, could you speak to maybe one tip to improve pronunciation?
I would recommend the same thing that I recommend my students, and I do it myself. I practice a lot. I listen. I try speaking it. I record myself, and I keep on checking. So that's what I keep on doing till to date. So I think that's one of the best strategies to improve your pronunciation.
And I think, when I go back, when I was learning Spanish, the first time I went to a Spanish class, I think it was 1977. I was in junior high school. I did not like Spanish. But if I go back, if I had like a smartphone that I could actually record, as you were talking about, Pragya, record myself and listen, record myself, and then record myself and listen to it 6 months from now, 9 months from now, a year from now, to actually see how much progress I was making. Certainly that could be one tip.
There is also a technique called imitation. So students can take like short sequences where native speakers speak, and they have to pause after a couple of sentences, and they repeat and copy the exact words, the exact pronunciation and intonation as the native speakers. And this is very, very useful. And then they can just do what we call shadowing, just after the speaker says what in the audio. Yes, so this is a very good technique to improve the pronunciation and even grammar, as well, as we said earlier.
Super. Henda says, respect students so they'll respect you. That kind of goes back to what we were talking about, developing a rapport and so forth, making a contract between you and them, and everything will be okay. Maybe establishing expectations. And let me ask you, speaking to you, Elaine, here it says, make a contract between you and them. Everything will be okay. How do you do that with online classes? Because that's what you specialize in.
Yeah, I mainly teach adults, so this is we do have a contract, but I understand what you mean. And yes, it's not easy to be respected, not by what you're doing, because I mean it's clear that we are reliable and so whatsoever. But the thing is, sometimes students are just like, oh, this is just an online class. This is just it's just. In Portuguese, we have a suffix to make, instead of saying little something like a little class, we just say, you put the suffix at the end. So we would have something like aulinha. Aula is what we have for class in Portuguese. And then I say, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't say it's just a class. It's just whatever. Don't say it's just a course. It's something important. It's part of your life. So this is my briefing on the first day of class. So usually this contract really works as far as being respected and respecting. But I don't know how it works with kids. I've been working with adults for 17 years. I don't know how about you guys, Riyad and Pragya.
Well, let's take a look at a few more comments. Carolina from Mexico says, greetings from Mexico. You have wonderful tips. Thank you. Alvin says, you guys are fantastic. Mona says, it's important from Tunisia. It's important to listen to our students' requests and needs.
Yes.
We should make them trust us so they can learn from us. Building this bond is vital to have a successful learning process. I know that Mona specifically, and I believe many of you, Pragya, Elaine, Riyad, have done different types of projects to help students become world citizens, to help them understand the needs of other people, because English certainly is just a vehicle to sharing ideas around the world.
Yes.
Zainab, thanks for answering your question. Well, thank you, Zainab, for sharing. I think talking about the difference between night and night, that's one of the things that you asked in your comment to me before the broadcast. Behad says, not actually to not lie. I'm trying to improve my British accent, and it's really hard to speak fluently as other native British people. No, you don't need to lie at all. We understand that people want to have, develop a certain
sounds
accent.
cute. It sounds cute. It sounds cute. I understand.
All right. Someone said, Henda said, talked about drilling. Oh, yeah, Elaine.
It's just that I tell my students that accent, like speaking like a British or American or whatever, is just the cherry on the top of that, sundae or that ice cream. The ice cream is perfect, it's delicious, but if you put that little cherry, then it's like, picture perfect. So that's the idea. If you controlled all the other aspects, grammar and everything, and then you say, okay, now I want to work on my accent, now I want to sound British or Australian or whatever, go for it. It is cute.
Absolutely. I think that is really that's really important. Some other factors that come in. Mongia says the Pygmalion effect is vital to learning. Tell me and I'll do it successfully. So kind of repeating and modeling, I think, are really important. Henda says we shall help our students to enhance their auditive memory to absorb the right target sounds. Kind of some of the things that everyone has been speaking about as well. And again, we have Olga saying hi. Again, it's great to hear people. Let's look at some other questions coming in as we're wrapping up the episode for today. A question is, Omar says, I work 10 hours a day. How can I practice English when I'm done? Pragya, you've worked 10 hours a day. You're exhausted. And now you're home and now you have to learn. What would you speak to that? I'd like to hear all of you. Very short answer. How do you do that when you're exhausted?
The thing he can do is he can download apps in his phone. So you don't have to sit in a computer again. So I would believe that. I download podcast a lot. Listen to podcast. It'll develop your listening skills. So with phone, you can always learn language.
Okay, so on your phone.
Yeah, everything is in your phone.
Okay. Elaine, any thought?
Yeah, bring it to your everyday life. If you're just going to get home after working 10 hours, watch a sitcom, watch a TV series, listen to music, do something you like, but do it in English. Then you're bringing English to your life and you're still having fun. Try to blend things up.
Right. Riyadh?
Yes, and I would say the same thing. I can't agree more, actually. And I don't think that even if he works for 10 hours a day, we still have time. We still have, let's say, 14 hours a day to learn something, at least. While we go to work, for example, at least we need at least 20 minutes to go to work and another 20 minutes to go back home. So that's 40 minutes a day just to listen to some podcasts while driving or while waiting for the bus or whatever. Mm-hmm. So they can just make the time to learn something, or and if you cannot sit in front of the computer like for 1 hour, so they can just take advantage of their computers or their phones, to listen to something on YouTube or whatever it is. Yes. So no excuse.
Yeah, and just pitching in to what Riyadh just said, yes, students have this idea like, okay, I need to study, I need to spare 1 hour and sit with a book or in front of a computer, and this is studying. No, that's not necessarily studying. You can just spend 1 hour looking at a book and wondering. Your mind is way off, so you don't need an hour. 15 minutes, as Riyadh said, 20 minutes driving to work. Every time, everywhere, you can put in a little English into your life.
Or maybe something I sometimes do is I'm going to bed, I have my iPad and I watch something on Netflix as I fall asleep, my iPad falls on the floor. It could be anything that you do, I think, in so many different ways. Let's go ahead and I know there are a couple of questions. We invite anyone in the last remaining minutes to ask a couple of questions, but I want to focus on two that we have here. First of all is with Sudeep from Nepal. He says, in your opinion, what is the best part of teaching English? And I want to bring that in to this question. We're going to talk about that. What has been the most challenging, the biggest challenge as a teacher, and what is the best part about teaching? If each of you briefly could speak to that, the greatest challenge and the greatest part about being a teacher. What could you speak? Elaine, if I could have you start.
Sure. The best part of teaching English is definitely the transformation we can bring to people's lives. It's amazing when I hear that a student could find a new job or was approved in a job interview because he had this better English, or this is like no money in the world could replace this. So this is something very satisfying. I think this is the first part, the best part. Well, the greatest challenge is dealing with students who don't understand what they're doing. This is the hardest to me. They're just there, but they don't really understand, and they're just like in guiding these people, you know. And then we see that there are so many really smart, really intelligent people, and then they're just kind of wondering and lost, and then guiding them like, okay, what are you here for? How? I think that this is the hardest part, because it's not exactly just being a teacher. It's kind of being a counselor or a psychologist, or something like that.
Right. Riyadh and then Pragya, speak briefly to the same question. Greatest challenge, greatest part about teaching.
Yes, I think the best part is when you feel that you are making a difference in your students' lives. So that's very important. And when, for example, you have a student who comes to you and say, thanks, teacher, for everything that you are doing, and that changing my life for the better. So that's the best part, and you feel that you are doing your job the right way. And the most challenging thing is how to make low achieving students be able to speak and participate. So that's something very challenging, and something that I'm struggling with this year, especially because of the COVID-19. So they didn't go to school for at least 6 or 7 months. And that's a lot for them. So they kind of forgot everything that they learned. So that's it. Yes.
Great, thank you. And Pragya, if you could speak to that.
I agree to whatever
Take us home. Take us home.
Ilan and Rihad had said. But for me, if I have to add one point, the best part of teaching any language, I'm not talking about English, any language, is to somewhere you accept the culture. The acceptance of culture comes along with learning a new language. So that's very important for me. So I think that's the best part of teaching any language. So challenges, I agree to what Eliane said. It's like, you really need to find out what's the purpose you're learning language. They are there to learn language, but what's the purpose of learning language? You really have to struggle with that at times. So I think that's the biggest challenge.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at any final comments that have come in here. We had
this is humanity's greatest challenge, right? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Why are we here? Right?
I know.
And that's really exciting. I mean, for me, is using English as the vehicle to answer those questions. I mean, I didn't become an English teacher to just stand and open a book and talk about grammar rules on page 27. So I think that's important. Mongia says, listening songs is so engaging, improves pronunciation. Henda says, time is money. So making sure that we use our time wisely. So Zainab says, it's an amazing episode. I learned a lot from it. Sudeep says, thank you, Randall, for this wonderful episode, and thank to all of you. Samaya says, learning idiomatic expressions is a start. For example, I think all of us would agree with that. Mona says, the best thing about teaching is when you discover hidden abilities. And I think that is one great way. And if we could add to that, again, Bimala says, thank you so much, Randall, for all of you. Thank you. And Miriam, thank you very much for joining. I want to thank all of you. Certainly in 1 hour, we can't cover every single topic, but certainly I think we've tried to. I think we've tried to address the needs and interests of students and teachers. And I want to thank all of you. My guests, Riyadh Kuba from Tunisia, Elaine Oliveira from Brazil, and Pragya Adhikari from Nepal. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode today.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. Thank you, Elaine.
Sorry.
Thank you so much. Well, let me go ahead and wrap up this episode. We just want to, once again, thank you very much for being a part of the episode dealing with the what's, whys, and hows of cultural learning. Certainly, Each one of us in taking small steps can make a difference. And again, we want to sign off for now. Thank you very much for your participation. Have a great day and an even better tomorrow.